What's happening, everybody? Welcome to the 45th episode of the Slapstream with Djordje live from Slapsville. Today, we're in a little bit of a different environment. I actually have to jam with some friends down in Newport Beach, and I was thinking, like, I really want to play, but I have to do the show because, I can't um, let you all hang in, like, to have a Saturday without a slap stream. So I figured out I should just bring Slapsville to Newport Beach and do this little thing right before my gig, right before jamming with a few friends of mine. So I'm excited about a gig. I haven't played like in a while, so this should be fun. But it's a little bit of a different kind of thing. So if you hear some noises, just so you know that I'm at a bar, so there might be people chatting, hanging out and drinking, and hopefully nothing too crazy going to happen. Before we start, I would like to thank to everyone that bought Art of Slap Bass t-shirts. Well, lots of you. It took me a while, like to pack all of that and mail it, and I even realized that I made actually a mistake with postage because I had like, all right, I'm gonna have just like a flat rate for a whole world, it's fine. And then some of the packages were going to Australia and like Belgium and like all over Europe and Canada, South America. So there was like a few of those that I actually had to pay more than it was the whole thing cost. Like, so it was kind of crazy. So if you notice, once you receive your t-shirts, that there's like 20, 30, 35 bucks postage, you can do the rest of the mailing fee via Venmo or PayPal if you're inclined. If you're not, it's fine. I'll be happy for you to wear the Art of Slap Bass t-shirt, spread a word. Or you can also join my Patreon, and we're gonna call it even. That's just $5 a month. So, and you get all kinds of cool content. All right, I would like to introduce my today's guest, and he is from Australia. He is an excellent bass player that I heard on Wayne Hancock's records back in the 90s when I was still living in Serbia. And then I thought, like, oh, this guy has a great sound and great tone, good intonation. And I'm glad that he has that he's super nice guy to talk to. So I'm actually excited about this episode. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce SHAWN SUPRA.
Hey,
welcome. What's
Djordje.
happening down in Australia?
Hey, man, way down under.
How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Just kind of the pandemic it hasn't really hit Australia like it has the rest of the world. So it's, I just moved here actually in September of last year. So, yeah. So I moved from Nashville, and I was there in the States when the pandemic hit. So, I definitely was affected like everyone else. And then I came here, and, no one's wearing masks and everything's just kind of back to normal. It was very strange. I kept thinking, like, okay, you guys know there's still a pandemic going on, right? But they've, we haven't had a community case in months. So,
oh, wow.
Well, yeah, great. It's kind of crazy, man.
Is everyone vaccinated, or what's going on? Why?
No, well, and
handle
on the
it better.
Side of that, the vaccine program has kind of hit a snag here. They don't have enough of the vaccines to vaccinate everybody, but there's no really community transmission. So I think that they're just, kind of, I don't know. It seems like they're dragging their feet on it. It's a big political thing. It has to do with like them not getting it from Europe and all this stuff. So. Yeah, but it's great, man. I mean, gigs are happening. Things are kind of back to normal. I feel a little.
So you're playing already?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Who are you playing with? Are you playing Rockabilly, or what are you doing?
It's Americana, country. I did a gig just a couple days ago with this guy. He's actually from Ohio. And it's kind of an alt country type thing. I was playing electric on that one. There's a pretty good scene here, man. It's small. A country scene. There's some some rockabilly type stuff, but it's a small scene. But they're good. I mean, the players are really good, so it's cool.
That's all that matters, as long as you have fun playing good music with good people.
Absolutely, man.
We can't ask for more than that. And how were things in Nashville before you moved to Australia? Were you able to play at all, or lower Broadway thing?
Yeah. I was in Nashville. I moved from Nashville. I moved to Nashville from Houston, Texas. I was in Nashville for 12 years. And I was doing I was in Nashville for a couple of weeks, and I got a gig with the Tennessee Three.
Wow.
Yeah, with Bob Wooten. Bob Wooten, who was Johnny Cash's guitar player from '68 until he died.
Oh, okay. So that was like basically 12 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna get to that. I was just thinking these few months in like last year when pandemic was happening, were there any gigs, or were you just kind of
yeah, man. So I just like with everybody, my entire career changed in like 2 days. I was playing 4 nights a week on Broadway, and I had just various gigs here and there, and got a phone call, it's, the gigs are canceled. But at that time it was, it's probably just going to be a few weeks, so I'm like, okay, cool. And here we are a year later. But yeah, it was, everything just kind of got upended. I was doing Broadway. I was also, I was working outside of music as well, but all of that ended too. I mean, it just, I just, everybody, I mean, it just, the whole world just kind of flipped on its head.
That's crazy. All right. One of the positive things of the pandemic is the Slapstream. I would never be able to do that, if there was no pandemic. And, I'm doing it on Saturday, so kind of that everyone can watch it. And I would definitely not be able to do that during regular.
Sure. Yeah. Everybody's kind of
time, I would be.
Yeah. We're kind of like slowing down. I think everybody's kind of reshifting their priorities and just,
it's definitely slowing down here in Los Angeles as well. I'm not sure when it's going to go back to normal, but it's still, things are still far from normal. I mean, there's
no, absolutely. I think that, here, like I said, people are kind of complacent, and they're acting like it's back to normal, which I guess relatively it is, but it could, change at the drop of a hat, so, and
I don't know anything. It's crazy
about it. What's that?
It's crazy. We don't know anything about it. I mean, we know very little.
Yeah.
But cool. All right. So we're here, and I would like to present your whole career to the world, because I think they have to be aware of your great playing and your great career, all those great artists that you played with. But before that, I would like you to hear, how did you get interested in music? How did you choose to play upright bass? What was the kind of the first thing that sparked?
Yeah, man. I growing up in Texas, I was exposed to a lot of country. My mother and my mother's side of the family listened to country music. And then on my dad's side, my dad listened to rock and roll and that sort of stuff. He loved the Beatles and all that. But, and I did not like country at the time because, I think you always rebel against what your parents listen to. I did like the Beatles, still do. But when I became a teenager, I started getting into the more like what they call alternative music, punk rock. And at the time it was new wave or whatever. And I really got into that. And that was kind of like my music. So I gravitated towards that kind of stuff. And I was really, really into the Smiths. And I guess I still am. And started just kind of wanting to learn how to play music just because I was really into it. And a friend of mine who's a little older than me, he played guitar. So I got a guitar, he taught me some chords, and I was just, playing chords and that sort of thing, picking out songs, just kind of doing that. And I don't know if you guys are into Morrissey or the Smiths, but in the early 90s, he kind of had a rockabilly band backing him up with members of the Polecats and Bosborer and this bass player called Gary Day. And when I saw him on tour, Gary Day played the upright bass. And I'd seen upright, of course, I'm 45 years old. So I was around when the Stray Cats were actually on MTV, but I didn't really think about upright bass like that. But I saw Gary Day playing, and he would do a solo during the show, and it just blew my mind. I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And seeing that, just the rockabilly style, I was just drawn to that. I was like, that's what I want to do. So, when I was probably 15, 16 at the time, really into rockabilly. It was just like I had blinders on for any other kind of music, I was just immersed into it. But then around 18, I bought an upright bass from a music store, did not know anything about him, got ripped off, didn't know that until much later, but it was a cheap Chinese bass for like $1,000. I'm kind of embarrassed to say that, but just started playing, man. And, found out about, really, I think the big thing was finding out that Elvis actually recorded some really great stuff in the early 50s at Sun. Everybody knows Elvis, but I guess I didn't realize that. And the Elvis Sun sessions just blew my mind. That was like Bill Black's playing really is how I learned how to play upright bass. Just I would, listen to the songs, and I'd get my guitar and figure out the chords, and then play, the bass notes on the guitar, and then, run over to the upright and play. Cause I wasn't very good. And just playing until my fingers literally bled like they all do, for all of us. And and finally, that one day when you're and you get that ticket, oh my God, I did it. I did it, and just practice. And that's pretty much it. And it just kind of took off from there.
That's so cool. It's interesting how, those early Elvis Presley's recordings are still full of energy and they're, full of youth, and there's something magical about it.
It really is magical. I read something, it might've been in one of the books about Sun, but they were talking about what it was about that studio. And because I'm sure we've all been there. It's like going going to Mecca or something, and you go in, it's just a small little room. Okay, well, there was something in the air there. There really was, and those recordings, everything made there, rockabilly wise. That's where I think everybody should start if they want to learn how to play upright bass. It's
cool, but it's interesting that you mentioned Gary Day and Morrissey and the Polecats, and that you got into rockabilly basically through Morrissey. I don't think that's kind of a common path, especially with the guys.
It's probably not.
They're in the 40s right now. Usually it's kind of the Stray Cats, and then you got
and I look at that stuff. I mean, not into, but it was, I knew who the Stray Cats were, because they were on TV, Rock This Town and all that stuff. But listening to the punk rock and the alternative stuff, that's where my head was when I was a teenager. And so, but it was really like a revelation seeing the upright bass played like that, and really oh, whoa, what is that? And I was probably like everyone else, is that a cello? I mean, I was just a dumb, yeah. But it became, and I think it kind of has to be this way for a lot, and it maybe is for a lot of people that play music. It becomes an obsession.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's cool. I'm actually glad you mentioned Morrissey, because I think lots of fans of my band, Tiger Army, are really big fans of Morrissey.
Sure.
And Tiger Army even toured with a Morrissey.
Yeah, right on. It's interesting you say that, because I went to see a lot of those shows back in 91, 92, and his opening acts at that time were Big Sandy, and some of those shows was the Planet Rockers.
Oh, cool.
And so, that was another exposure, you know, and
So
of course,
where were you living back in those days?
I was in Houston at that time.
In Houston. Okay. So from Houston, you went to Nashville, or you went to Austin and then Nashville?
No. I never lived in Austin.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
Nashville, Australia.
Yeah, man. Houston until 2008, moved to Nashville.
Okay.
And then until, September of 2020, moved here to Sydney.
What was the reason to move to Nashville?
Like everything, it was a girl.
Okay.
Yeah, my girlfriend at the time had gone to Middle Tennessee State University, which is a school outside of Nashville. And we met in Houston. She wanted to move back there. And, at the time nothing really was going on. I was like, oh, what the heck? See what happens. So
sure.
I moved.
Nashville is a huge music city. What is the reason to move to Australia?
What's that?
What was the reason to move to Australia?
Another girl. No, my wife actually. So I met my wife, or I met the person that would soon be my wife on tour here when I was on tour here in Australia, and we got married. And she moved to the States, and we lived there for a while. And then, it was always a question of like not if we would move to Australia, but when.
Okay.
And so, if I'm going to be honest, it was, the political climate at the time and just everything was just kind of like, might be time to get out of here, and so I applied for my visa. It was accepted, and here we are. It's a different place. Obviously, it's almost, literally a different world, but it's good.
I toured down in Australia like before, and I always liked it. I really enjoy, and I could possibly see myself living there. I'm not against it.
Yeah.
But there's like lots of things that are going on in Los Angeles that
sure.
I'm with the heart. It's I don't know. I mean, I already moved, a couple times, like
yeah. You know what it's like to me.
The other side of the world. So
yeah.
I can do that again, but
man, it's cool. Look, I knew coming over here that obviously moving from Nashville, which is, musically like no other place on earth. You could show up for a gig and Willie Cantu's playing drums, or, obviously Willie played with, Buck Owens, or Lynn Owsley, who played with the Texas Troubadours, is playing steel. It's like, oh my God. You're walking down this, like, you'll be on Broadway and hey, look, there's Greg Gehring with Bob Moore. That doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. And I knew that coming here, but I think the trade-off is, there's a trade-off that I think is more important to me right now. So here I am.
Absolutely. That's great. And you're already gigging and you're already playing. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, man.
I would love to hear you play a little bit. Do you have your bass with you?
I do. I have my Chadwick.
All right.
My all of our stuff, we have to you have to send it over in a shipping container. And so my main bass is an Upton, and we sent our stuff. It left Nashville in August of last year, and it's just now going to get here on Wednesday.
Oh, wow.
So, man, I'm like, it's not, we sold most of our furniture and everything. So it's just like clothing and personal stuff. All of that stuff can fall into the ocean for all I care. If I just want my Upton to be, I want to open the case and it just be, cause man, this is, I'm not sponsored by them at all, but it's the best bass that I've ever owned. And awesome. I love the thing. So I've got my Chadwick here, which is great. Right. I love it.
Let's do that.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not really sure. I really learned a lot from Kevin Smith, as I think most people my age, especially people my age that were from Texas, we learned he was kind of like the guru. And then also there's a guy called Rick Ramirez who played with Wayne Hancock for a long time, and they had a lot of similar stuff. So I feel like I play like I learned how to play by listening to Bill Black, of course, but my style is basically molded after Kevin Smith and Rick. And, just thinking about it, like the way that they play is not like any other person, I don't think, recorded, previously, if that makes sense, especially like in country music, even guys like Joe Zinkin and all those guys. And I think it might just have to do with, I don't know if it was just because, that came off playing with Wayne, no drums. I don't know. But so like, the way that I play is very, very meat and potatoes. So like if this is a very Kevin Smithy thing. But they always do that, the drag thing, walking up, just. That thing is really Kevin Smithy, walking back up, from the 5 to the 1. And that's something that I feel like it's like I do that every time. I don't know if I'm stealing their style, but I really do play. I learned a lot from playing, from listening to Kevin. The other things that I noticed that I obviously then, you find out like he was the one that told me, Kevin was the one that told me about Willie Dixon. And that just opened up a whole, this is of course back before the internet and YouTube. There's the things that he did. I was like, I don't understand. It was like magic. Like, how is he doing I did not understand the slaps that he did. And it, even that one, I just learned that, but several years ago. And it was because of YouTube. Actually, Nicola Debouché's video, I was like, oh, that's how he's doing it, So the other things that I'll do that I learned, like from Willie Dixon, slaps that I like to do is like he does that syncopated thing where he'll like go. That thing is cool, man. That's one of my favorites, and I don't hear a lot of people doing that. I don't know. I mean, I'm not really like I guess I could play like a solo thing, but it's just I feel like I would be doing stuff that you've already heard, that people have already heard on here.
That's always good. You have your own style. You played solos with Wayne Hancock. I love your playing.
His solos. The thing with Wayne was, man, it was like boot camp for bass players because, there's no drums, and he would, you would be playing a song, and then he would say like, let's say you're playing Juke Joint Jumping. He would be like, I mean, seriously, he'd be like, take 3, and you're like, what? So you'd have to do 3 solos. And then you're like, okay, well, I did that. What do I do now? You're doing, it's like you had to like, okay, well, what can I do so that I am not repeating myself every time? And he would like, seriously, literally, you'd be playing, he'd be like, take 3. It's like, okay, I got to take 3 solos, even though, we've already been playing for 3 hours, no drums. And I'm just going, for 3 hours. It was definitely like boot camp for bass players.
So for how long were you with Wayne?
At the time I had the distinction of being his longest bass player. It was almost 2 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He kind of goes through them, or at least he did at the time. It's definitely a workout.
2 years, and you were living in Houston back then.
Yeah, I was in Houston. I had a friend who was I don't know how he found out, but he was like, "Hey man, Lenz is looking for a bass player." And
oh, so Wayne Hancock was first, and then Lenz was the second.
No, Lenz was first. And
okay.
Yeah, and so man, I'm trying to think of how it went. So I guess he gave me her number. This friend of mine, he must have, or he gave. Anyway, we got in touch. I went up to Dallas. She was living in Dallas at the time, and I auditioned, blah blah blah. I got the gig and toured with her for a good while, and then she wanted to take some time off to start a family, and I think a lot of people that are side guys can appreciate this. This is really the first time that it happened to me, but your career is based on another person's life, so if they decide, well, I no longer want to do this, well, then you're out of work. And that's what happened with Kim. It was the first time that happened. I was devastated. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm in my early 20s. My career's already over. But I knew Wayne Hancock's bass player at the time was this guy called Davey Ketchum, who was really good. He was really cool because he was left-handed, but he played a regularly, strung bass. And it was really weird to see him because, he would be like this backwards. But his thought was, and it was pretty good. He was like, yeah, man, the reason why I learned how to do it like that is because, number one, left-handed basses are expensive. And if I ever have to borrow one, I'll know how to play it, or I'll be able to play it, But anyway, he called me one day. I think I'd been out of work, or Kim had quit maybe a month or so. And he was like, hey man, I'm not going to be playing with Wayne anymore, but I've given him your number, and he'll give you a call. And man, I was a huge Wayne Hancock fan. When that first record, that Thunderstorms and Neon Signs record came out, someone had given it to me and said, hey, I think you'd like this. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, hey, Kevin Smith's on it. And I, had known of Kevin from High Noon. And I listened to that record and I was like, this is the greatest thing I'd ever heard. And obviously, I knew who Hank Williams was, listened to Hank Williams and Jimmy Rogers and all that. But so when I played with Wayne for the first time, I knew every single song. It was like, what you got, Wayne? Let's do it, And I think that kind of impressed him. And he was like, brother, you want to go out on the road? And I'm like, let's do it, man. So, that's how I got it. It's like, like everything every gig I've gotten has been just from knowing, someone recommending you or that sort of thing.
I wanted to ask you about it, actually. Like, how do you usually get gigs? Is it by that, or do you have a recommendation? Because the times actually change. Whenever I ask like older people, they usually say, "Hey, you post an ad in a music store," but nobody does that anymore.
Nobody does that. That was my very first band that I was in. At 18. That's how we all got together. But God, that was 94 or something. So that's how we got, but everything, if I were to really sit there and think about it, it's been recommendations from other people. I'm not really hip on social media and getting it's fun, it's like even though the upright is a very showy instrument, I mean, people are like, wow, I'm not a showy guy. I think maybe if I were to analyze it psychologically, I played bass because, you're kind of in the background, and so
you're never standing on a bass. That's what you want to say?
Man. I've seen too many accidents, and even though it's cool, it's just not my thing. Okay. I don't know, man. I'm not like a listen, like I was saying, I think of bass playing I don't remember where I read this. It might have been like Milt Hinton or somebody. I don't remember, but they said, think of it as BASE playing, and that's kind of how I go about it. So I think that just translates into everything else in terms of, I don't have a big social media presence. So I've never gotten a gig because somebody has looked at my social media and been like, wow, this guy's great, let's get him. It's all been recommendations. I just got another gig here in Sydney from a drummer that I've been playing with, and she's a great drummer. Her name's Laws Benson. And she's like, hey, I just recommended you. There's someone starting up a new project I think you'd be great for. So, okay, cool. I've got some gigs now. It's just kind of how it is, being around. You just have to be around and show up, be prepared, make a good impression that way, I think.
Be on time, dress nice, be polite.
Man, the Bob Moore, someone told me it was Bob Moore. So if it's not, but it was play in tune, play in time, forget the rest of the stuff, and it's just, like if you do that, I think that, people will have a long career, definitely the slapping is really where a lot of the people are like, wow, that's great. And it is, man, it's great. I love it. I love slapping. But like, I think that if you were, if you're playing, like if you're playing a country shuffle, like if you're playing Walking After Midnight, you're not going to, because that's not the song, you're just, I think that that's something that I really learned in Nashville is to play the song. If you're playing, if you're playing That's All Right, Mama, obviously you're gonna, oh, that's all right, mama. You're gonna be. But if you're playing, I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry, you're not going to be, you're not going to be slapping a waltz. I think that's something that
I love slapping waltzes.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? Like
sure.
If you're playing with somebody, they might look over, and I think that took a lot. That was something that I learned to kind of hold back. That took me a while, because like I
mean, slap is so exciting, so you want to like do it kind of like, and then especially when you master it, you're kind of like, I want to slap it and do all these triplets and gallops and everything. And then, but you have to learn how to hold back. Absolutely.
That's, be holding back. Yeah, man. When, like it's like like I said, the first time, I wish I would have had video of it, but you're like, and then you go, oh my God, I did it. Oh my God. And then, so, you try it again, and you can't get it. Oh, well, oh, I got it. And then, it's just like anything, when you do something new, you definitely want to keep at it because you want to practice and show the world what you can do. But I think maybe as we mature more as players, you kind of understand, oh, wait, my job is to service the song and do that kind of stuff. And then when it's really necessary, okay, I can slap here. It's kind of like if you start out in fifth gear, where do you go from there? And another thing that I really learned in Nashville with that, because playing on Broadway is it's almost like you have to beat everybody over the head for 4 hours. People that don't know, so Broadway is just it's a street in Nashville that's just bars, bar after bar, and they have live music there from 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. and the bands play in 4-hour shifts. And you have to keep these people you have to keep their attention for 4 hours and like just beat them over the head, you know, because you're playing for tips. And I found that if you, like, for me anyway, I can't, it's like, and maybe it's just because I'm older now, but I can't do that for 4 hours, you know? I mean, there are people out there that can. I know Joe Fick, you know, you've had him on here. He's one of the best in the world. Great guy. He can do that, but that's not me. So I learned, but and it also helps to serve as a song where you're like, okay, so if the singer's singing, I don't know, let's say, you know, I don't know, just a boogie, you know, and during the vocal, you know, he's singing, you know, and you're just kind of walking it, and then when the solo comes, or the guitar, you know, the guitar break comes, just drive it, you know. And then vocals come back and just kind of walk it again, you know, and just kind of keep that up and down going. I found is really, because that really makes the crowd, yeah, okay, here's all, you know, take our money.
Absolutely. I think it's important to use different texture of our instrument. You know, I love to play with the bow as well. And then if you play with the bow and then you play pizzicato and then you play slap, it's kind of like 3 different instruments because you have that.
I wish that I could bow. I don't bow.
You don't bow at all?
No, man. And you know, and I think it's because like you know, I had one, it was a cheap plastic one. I think, you know, you just like anything else, you kind of have to get a good one. So it was kind of frustrating. And I don't have you play steel strings, don't you?
Yeah.
See, that first off is amazing to me. Like how your hands aren't torn up. But it's hard for me to bow on gut strings because, you know, I've never really had anybody show me how to do it. But I'd like to maybe get have another bass set up with steel strings just so I could practice doing that.
Did you have any formal music education or not?
No, man. I just listened. Like I said, yeah, I had a buddy, like I said, that taught me how to play, you know, chords on a guitar. But it was, you know, I would call him, like the guitar would get out of tune, and I'd call him up and I'd be like, "Hey, man, my guitar's out of tune." Because I didn't have a tuner. It was an acoustic guitar. And so he'd be like, all right, hit the E, boom, up, go up a little more. So, you know, he'd help me tune it over the phone. So like but I didn't have any formal training, but it definitely helped me learn my ear. I can tune a guitar now. So that's good. But no, man, no formal training. Just, you know, if I had any lessons, it would be, like I said, you know, I was fortunate enough to know Kevin and B and Rick and those guys, and like, oh man, show me how to do that. You know, what are you doing there? And so those would have been my lessons, you know, from those guys, which I'm really grateful for, you know, that
Absolutely. I mean, their sound is great. I love Kevin's playing. I love Rick's playing. It's, I mean, when he was with two Tons of Steel, I think. I immediately noticed his sound, and you know, excellent player. He played in a opening band at a Continental Club when I was on tour with Deke Dickerson, and then he played with some lady. It was in Houston. It was not in Austin. It was in Houston, and so it was the only time that I actually met him, and then we talked. And then
he's a super nice guy, man. I mean, obviously, I'm sure you thought about having him do this, but he doesn't have any presence online or anything. The last time I talked to him was on the phone. It was I mean, I was still in Texas, and just to see how he was doing, he's great. He's a really nice guy. I would definitely love to get him, and I would love to get Gary Day as well. I talked to Gary, and we're gonna make it happen, you know. But that would be great.
It's you know, people are making fun of me when I started this. Yeah, you're gonna have 10 players or something. Now this is like a 45th episode, and every single player was unique and great, and then brought something new. So I'm thinking, like, you know what, you know,
why do you think that?
More than 10, you know,
thinking about that too, like, as you know, I'm like thinking about what you do and what you're doing, because, you know, back when I was playing, obviously there's no internet. You had to actually meet people. Like, one of the first people actually thinking about it now was that from Houston that was Jason Burns. You know, because he was in that band, the Road Kings, they were from Houston. And he was actually one of the first people outside of Gary Day that I saw that actually, like, oh,
really?
wow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So,
you know,
just to make sure those were 90s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, the Road Kings were still going. Like, it was at that time, God, 95-ish, 6, something like that. The Road Kings were still going, but Jesse Dayton also had like a solo thing. But the Road Kings would play, absolutely. And that's how I met Jason. And, you know, picked his brain more. Jason was really into, it's funny, man, you know, he's doing what he's doing now because he was really, really into finding the tone that he wanted and finding a bass. Because I remember you talking about standing on it. He would like break the necks off of basses from standing on them. And he was like, man, these basses, And so I think that's why, you know, when he started King, it was basically to make a bass that you could like abuse like a P bass and still, you know, it still be in tune. But he was always doing
that was always his goal, like, to make a bass that it's sturdy enough, you know, that you're able to tour and not to worry that it's gonna be.
Dude, he was doing that in the 90s. Like, he would like his brain was there, and I think he was even making his own pickups back then. I could be wrong about that, but yeah. So what was I saying?
Have you ever played his stuff?
No, I never did, man. You know, when he, I mean, I have, like, I've played Dave Rose and Chris Rhodes's, who played with Wayne after me. You know, that, yeah, I have played them, but I don't own any of them. You know, like, he was at those back when he was doing King, he was in LA, I believe. And I had a K that I really liked, and I was playing, and then I got my Upton, and I was like, oh, well, you know, this is, yeah. So no, I've never owned one of his basses, but man, he's totally doing what he was wanting to do 25 years ago. It's pretty cool.
It is, yeah. That's what he's supposed to do. And now he's in London, you know, he doesn't have a shop in Orange County anymore. So London.
Yeah. So like but back in, you know, before the internet, it was like, I didn't think I was the only person that was into this, but there weren't that many people, you know, at least that's the way that it seemed, you know. Seriously, back in those days, you know, then I got into a band, and I got into a true rockabilly band in the early to mid 90s called Chad Thomas and the Crazy Kings. And we played with a lot of people, and that's how I met Bo Sample. You know, we played with Cave Cat Sammy. It's like, oh man, look at this guy. And at the time, Bo was like 17. I'm in my like early to mid 20s. And he's this 17-year-old kid who was, I mean, obviously he's better now, but he was as good as I was and had only been playing for like a couple of years at the time. I was like, man. But, you know, you had Bo Sample, you had, you know, Jake Irwin, who was playing with Kim Lenz at the time, and this guy called Billy Horton. So there was just a few people, but, you know, you're like, oh, wow, okay, cool. Those are all these people that I'm meeting. But that was it. You know, I didn't, you know of anybody else in the area. And now, like you said, you know, you're on your 45th episode, because I don't know if it's the internet that's helping things out, or, you know, it used to be you would,
it's my crazy research and crazy dedication that I wanted to meet every possible
we're doing a great job, man. I mean,
in a world.
Yeah.
So I remember that in the 2000s, I was really going with my little camcorder and filming every single Romani player in the street in Italy or France, wherever I was going. I had like the thing, and I still have those recordings.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to talk only about slap bass, and then like to figure out why people started doing that, and then where people brought it, and then what I discovered that everybody knew. I mean, the good players knew what was going on in their own genre, but nobody really paid attention too much out of the style that they were mostly accustomed to. So that was one thing that kind of always bugged me. I wanted like to connect those things and then show people how slap bass could be used, from classical and jazz, like to blues and rockabilly, or Romanian music or Serbian, Balkan music, whatever. So
absolutely. And I think if you're, not saying that if you don't do this, you're not a serious player, because that's not what I mean. But I think that with some people, like I was talking to Joe Fick one time about this, like he and I kind of have similar ways of thinking, even though I wish I could play like him. But you start at rockabilly and then you go back and you're like, okay, now I'm at, 50s country. You discover those guys, and you go, okay, cool. Well, let's dig a little deeper. Now I'm at Western swing, and you just start digging. And eventually, you're at jazz, or you're, and I think you'd have to do that in order to be a well-rounded player, if that makes sense, instead of just like I don't want to be known. I never wanted to be known as I play rockabilly bass. Like I would want to be known as I'm just a bass player, who can play rockabilly, who can play country, who can, play this, that, so I think that what you're saying is definitely, if you want to be serious about it, you kind of have to do that, I think.
I agree with you. My way was like, I wanted to have formal education. So I went to the classical music conservatory. I went to the jazz school. So for me, it was really important to understand music, and then to be able to analyze Wagner or Mahler, to check out their operas and then see, oh, okay, I understand why this is happening this way. The same with jazz. If I have giant steps, I want to understand why are all these 2 5s back to back, and what's going on, which scale you're supposed to play, why is that harmonized that way, and all those kind of things.
And you did it right. I think maybe if I would have go back in time, I probably would have done that. Everything that like I said, I was was not, I mean, and I think it shows in a lot of my playing. And if you're not formally trained, you definitely are limited. But I noticed just from playing, and then you just instinctively, or maybe you're shown certain things, and then when you learn the theory behind it, you're like, oh, okay, cool, I've already been doing that, that's cool. Now granted, that's not saying that I think everybody can benefit from education. Maybe I'm just lazy. I don't know. I'm kind of like, well, hell, it's gotten me, my playing's gotten me this far. I
think it's, for me, education was very important. And I think that it opened me up a lot to lots of different music styles, and to help me understand music. But I'm not one of those guys that kind of saying it's really the only way to have lessons and to push people into it, because it's not really. I heard lots of people, lots of amazing players, jazz players that played complicated stuff that did not understand how to do. They were not understanding. They didn't have understanding what they were actually doing. And then when they started doing classical, it kind of helped them in a way, like to understand. So I think that's a great way. But you also have like lots of musicians that are classically educated. They are stuck and they can't get out of it. And
there's that joke. I mean, it's kind of a joke. Like, how do you, how's it go? How do you make a jazz guitar player shut up? Take away his charts.
Oh.
Whereas it's like a lot of those people, they don't know what to do if their training, they don't know how to jam, basically. You know, their training is taken away from them, you know, and I mean, I think that that's two sides to every coin, you know, that
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, there's people that, I mean, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure, I don't think Willie Dixon took, you know, formal lessons. Maybe he did, I don't know, but he's one of the best, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You
But
know,
I love Willie Dixon, but that's another thing. If you had like a guy that was playing just like that, that would be kind of fairly limited. Willie Dixon was excellent because he did those things his own way. But
yeah,
he had like a couple, you know, little things that he was doing. Even he's one of my favorite slap bass players of all time. But primarily he was a songwriter, and that's what brought him to be that successful. And
yeah. I get you. Yeah. You know, and yeah, Bill Black, for example, you know, he was very limited.
Yeah.
But you know, he was great at his limitations.
He played with Elvis, and you know, I mean, it's not getting any cooler than that.
But, you know, you have that, you know, that in his story, for example, when he was kind of forced, if you will, to play electric bass, he, you know, threw it like that's Elvis on You're So Square.
Maybe I Don't Care.
Yeah, that's, you know, because he was like, I can't do this, you know, and so his limitations definitely were limiting in his, but you know, I mean, he could play the hell out of the slap bass, you know.
Those were different times, you know, like, and then, and you know, I mean, and after Elvis, I mean, he was not playing with successful bands that much. I mean, so if you want to really be able to maintain a career, you have to be able to play with different people on a certain level. So not just to play with, you know.
You have to definitely branch out and not, you know, like I said, you know, don't be just, you don't want to be known as the rockabilly guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, you know, because they're not going to call you because they have this idea in their head that you're going to be standing on your bass and just, you know, you know, and it's like, oh, well, if you want me to do that, I can do that, but I can also do this, you know.
Yeah. It's important to know, you know, your intonation. It's important to be able to walk up, walk down, to have like a nice counterpoint, walking bass lines and all of that. I mean, that's kind of the goal.
I think if you get, the further along you go, the you know, if you're right-handed, the left hand is really where your brain starts to go, oh, I want to learn like that's that player right there. Wow, look at what they just did. That's cool. You know, the right hand is great, but you know, it's the talking is up here, you know. I mean, don't get me wrong, I can do, and I love doing this, you know, rhythmically, you know, I can play with the drummer doing the same thing, you know, a Bo Diddley. I could do that all night. I mean, that to me, the rhythmic aspect of this instrument is what drew me to it. Seeing somebody do that was like, what is this sorcery? But then you get more further and further along, and you realize, like, you know, someone going is like, whoa, that's cool. That, you know, that like talks right here, you know, the stuff that Bob Moore would do. Like, I still don't know that. I mean, that's just him as a talented person, but like, you know, what he does in Crazy is that little is like, blew my mind. Like, wow, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. So the left hand is really, I think, as you go along, is really where it's at, you know, and seeing people like you, like I see, you know, how you phrase things and the way, like, you know, when I first saw you, it was, I think, like a lot of people, it's like that atomic boogie. And I remember Joe Fick and I were like, hey, have you seen that guy?
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And, you know, and it's like, oh man, you know, what you're doing. It's like the right hand is amazing. It's great. But I'm like, okay, I got that. But it's like, whoa, what is even here? Whoa, that's the magic.
And that was like a 15 years ago. Can you imagine? Oh man, 15 years ago. And I remember I uploaded that video because the guy from Sean, actually from Sean Burrell from rockabillybase.com. So he wanted to interview me. And then he was, hey, I love your playing and I would like to get you on the website, but nobody knows about you. And I'm like, okay, so what do you want me to do? He's like, do you mind like filming a video and maybe posting? There's like a new website called YouTube, so you can post a video over there. And I was like, okay, I'll do it.
The YouTube.
Yeah, it was like because like a new thing, it was just started a few months before that or something.
Yeah, right.
So
well, man, it worked. It worked. Because everybody's like, you seen that guy?
Literally, when I was going on tour with Deke Dickerson, shortly after that, there was every single show somebody would ask me about the comic book.
It's like one of those things where you go, well, I'm just going to quit now. No, it's, man, something else that it took a long time to learn. And and Charlie Chadwick actually really kind of put it succinctly, is you just got to be the guy and is like, well, be the guy that they need, and there's only one you. So, I am all that I can do. It's like Joe Fick and I were talking one time about that. Like there are people out there that are, constantly chasing, if I do this, it'll make me play better or this, that, or the other. And it's like, man, if Joe Fick plays my bass, he's going to sound like Joe Fick. If I play his bass, I'm going to sound like me, because we can't be anyone else, and it took me a long time to learn that. Maybe I still, if I were to be honest with myself, sometimes I do get like, I'm done. I suck. I'm not going to, I quit, if I hear somebody, but then I'm like, you know what? Hey man, I can just be me. I can just do what I can do. I'm the guy that's me,
Cool.
And so it took a while to do that, but that doesn't mean that I don't want to stop learning. If I see somebody do a lick or something, I'm like, man, that's cool. I need to incorporate that, but
it's interesting for me. Like as far slap goes, I want to learn everything. I want to learn all these slaps and want to make them my own. I want to play them on steel strings, which was kind of challenging.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back in the day. And then I was like, okay, and then I have to, what else can I do? So can I do reverse gallop? Can I do like this? So I covered Slayer and I figured out, Slayer works great if I do that reverse gallop. And then I was like, okay, so what about if I reverse all these patterns that I do and then this and combine like that? So I started thinking like, well, that's kind of education, what brought me, started analyzing all of these and kind of breaking them apart and then figuring out like new licks and new ways of playing.
Yeah. And that also doing that help you. It shows you've been playing for so long that you've got an ear that you can pick those things apart, and I think that's something that we're all trying to strive for, but something that I think a new player really needs to learn is the ear. Just like where the song is and be able to like listen to a song and go, oh, okay, I can pick it apart. Okay, I got it, or at least like an assimilation of what it is, and I think that takes a while to do.
Absolutely. Let me, we mentioned Wayne Hancock, we mentioned Kim Lenz.
Yep.
Can you just please mention like, other great artists that you played with? So after, you kind of started with Kim Lenz.
Started with Kim.
Who was playing guitar back then in Kim Lenz?
That was Nick Curran. Nick Curran was playing.
So it was Nick.
And so actually, Nick, funnily enough, man, Nick is the guy, or is how I learned how to do the we were at a gig somewhere and he was like, oh man, I learned how Willie Dixon did that thing. And I was like, oh, show me. I don't know where Nick was, as most people know, was such a great musician. So it's not surprising that he could, figure something like that out. But yeah, that's how I learned to do that syncopated thing that Willie does. So yeah, Nick was playing guitar, and I played with Kim, you know, for a couple of years. We recorded the her second record with her. I played with
Jake Irving before you in the band?
Yeah, so she had only at that point had only had 2 bass players, which was Jake and myself.
Oh, okay.
Jake had quit to go play with
Hot Club.
No, man, Billy Horton was playing with Hot Club before Jake.
Okay.
I don't know why Jake. Maybe he just kind of wanted to get off the road. To be honest with you, I don't know. But he. Yeah, so he wasn't. Yeah, so he quit. So I, got the Kim gig and toured with her for a good while. I guess almost 2 years, maybe. She quit or wanted to take a break, and I got the Wayne gig. Played with him for almost a couple of years, and then just kind of. Be honest with you, after playing with Wayne, I was kind of like, yeah, I don't really want to tour anymore. So I just kind of did local stuff and for a good while. And then were
you able to be like a full-time musician after?
No, man. In Houston at that time, I wasn't. So I was doing, I learned how to do, I got into like doing construction because those were the type of jobs that you could do. And like, if you needed to take off for, whatever, they're like, yeah, okay, see you, come back, see you when you get back. So I was doing that. I was playing locally, just, various bands. And I was friends with Chris Rhodes, who was Wayne's bass player after me. And we were just, friends as you do. You'd commiserate every time he'd come into town to, tell horror stories and stuff. And Chris moved to Nashville. I guess it would have been 04, I don't know, some early 2000s. And anyway, and he called me one day and said, hey, Rosie Flores is looking for a bass player. I can't do it. I gave her your number. Again, someone recommending me. And I was still living in Houston. Rosie was living in Nashville. So she called me and I started playing with her. And part of her deal at that time playing with her was she was also backing up Wanda Jackson. So I got to play with Rosie and Wanda, and I was flying into Nashville, playing with them, meeting people. I met Chris Scruggs. I played with him for a little while. I was kind of like hanging out in Nashville. I'd play for a little while. I'd do these tours with Rosie, and then sometimes with Rosie and Wanda. Then I'd fly back to Houston, but I was meeting all these people in Nashville. Like I said, played with Chris Scruggs for a little bit. Played with Greg Gehring. Just making relationships, so when I moved to Nashville, like officially moved to Nashville, I had already like had a network of people that I knew. So I was pretty fortunate in that sense.
That's what you're doing now in Australia. It's
pretty much
up for you pretty fast.
Well, the good thing about Australia is, now we've got the internet. So like a lot of the people that I know now, we were friends on Facebook, Okay. And then, I'm like, hey, I'm moving in to Sydney, blah, 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 oh, okay, great. So you kind of already you just have to have that network of people,
That's definitely helpful. And internet is, it's helping, connecting, and that's kind of like one of the good things.
Absolutely.
And but don't you think that social media can actually help you out, like get gigs? And
I do. I think that if I were more, if someone was more adept at it, definitely. I just don't. It's hard for me. I just recently started putting videos up, and
that's what I wanted to ask you about. Actually.
Yeah, and and quite honestly, that's because of my wife. She's like, you need to put more video. You need to put videos up. You need to get out there, and I'm like, well, I guess my thing is getting over the idea of like, what do I have to say that hasn't already been said a million times before, or even better than, you know, someone like you or Nicola or these and I'm like, you know what the hell, I just do, you know, do what I do and you know, put some videos up, and you know, so I'm kind of dipping my toe in the water of doing I don't know how to do the hashtags though. I'm like, well, what do I hashtag? What is that?
I really enjoyed like the video that first let me mention that if people want to hear you play on social media, there's a Instagram under your name.
Yep.
And so they should just go and follow you, and then to check out some really cool videos.
Yep.
The one that I really enjoy hearing is the one that you did from Shug Fisher.
Yeah, man. Is that who that is?
What did I say?
That's who that bass player is.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Okay.
No, seriously. You know, like again, like I said in that post,
we're talking about Far Brothers, right?
Yeah. That guy's amazing. That song, Kevin, again, everything comes back to Kevin with me. It's like that guy's like the guru. He was like, hey man, you should check this song out. Or maybe he had just heard, I don't know, either something. He was like, you got to check this song out. It's, you know, the 40s. I was like, oh my God, that's the greatest thing I'd ever heard. And it, you know, and I think that at that time, I didn't realize that people were playing upright bass like that. Even, I mean, that song was from the 40s, if I'm not mistaken, but you know, of course they're playing, you know, earlier than that, but I didn't realize that. And it blew my mind. And that's one of those songs that I will show people. I'm like, hey, have you ever heard this song? And they're like, what? So yeah, that was a good one. I think that was one that I was like, yeah, let me do Texas Stomp, you know?
I'm really glad you did it. Those recordings are actually from late 30s. And
is it really? Well, there you go.
Yeah. And he's the guy that was a bass player with Sons of the
Pioneers.
He was the bass player. He came after Pat Brady, I believe.
Okay.
And then, you know, then he did that Far Bros, those few recordings that are kind of one of the most essential slap bass recordings from the 30s.
I had no idea. Yeah, until, you know, he showed me, and like, you know, his, like we were talking about, like his, like for me, it's you know, I think I mean, it's in E flat, but you know, play it in D. But like how he gets to that, like that's so cool, you know. And it's like learning those, like I said, the left hand, like, you know, he's just doing an E, we'll say D minor, but like, okay, I got that. I understand that, you know, it's just one, you know, flat 3, you know, D minor scale, but his, like how he gets into it. I mean, yeah, I've heard that before, but wow. Okay, maybe I can try that one day. You know, it's that kind of stuff. Like learning the left hand is like, okay, that's where the money is, really, as far as
it's really cool. Do you mind like playing the whole thing, you know, for people that haven't seen that?
Let's see if I remember. All right. You know what? I'm gonna have to say, I think that, well, I could be wrong. I can't play it as fast as he. Even doing that recording that I did, I was like, oh, this is fast. They had to have sped that up. All right, let's see. I'll just do the solo. No, let's see. How does it go? I'll just do the solo. Something like that.
Man, I love it. I love his recordings. I love the way you do it. It sounds great.
That's so cool, man. That's just so cool. You know, and it's
it
like
is cool. Yeah.
what that's what made him a cool player. So Sug Fisher, very
And
cool.
like let's do like a little. I don't have my bass with me. I actually it's in the car, but let's do like a little lesson thing. Like let's show that section to to all these bass players that are watching. So grab your bass and then let's show that lick that you just played. The cool lick, the cool Chuck Fisher lick. If you don't mind telling the notes and what you explain what you do.
It, because the song, it's like I said, the record is actually in E flat because I think they might have sped it up a little bit. Maybe not, and I don't think he's playing in E flat, so I just play it in D, and it's just D minor. Sorry, the Chadwick tends to rattle sometimes, but it's D, F, G, A. Just a D minor walk. But how he gets into it is from the 5, from the A, and he just A flat, A, B flat, A, G, F, E, D. So he's just kind of descending, and you'll hear that a lot in like Latin-y type music. Like as a matter of fact, another bass player that I really admire, especially back in the day, was Jimbo from Reverend Horton Heat, and they've got that song "In Your Wildest Dreams," and he does that. He kind of gets into it like that. It's just kind of a Latin-y thing, I guess. But the lick is just D minor chord, and then he goes, which is just D in your octave. And that's something else that I've learned is like the power of the one, basically, like the power of just hitting that. Just that he does it again when he like goes, that's so cool. Like you don't have to like be, like, but man, just hitting that one. But anyway, he's just deep. Oh, yeah. And then he just walks. It's just a chromatic walk down D, C. Back to that lick again. So he's just chromatic D, C, what is that? D flat, B flat, A, and then that lick. That's it. Very simple. Like when you look at it,
very simple, but it's very cool. I love it. It's so cool.
But go ahead.
It's interesting that people know him mostly as an actor, and then he was a musician, but an actor, and then he played a musician in lots of old Hollywood movies, and he was also a composer. I think that he wrote like Cincinnati Lou with Myrtle Travis.
Oh, no kidding. Okay. Well,
there you go. Yeah. So he I'm actually surprised that people don't know about him that much, and that they don't mention his name that often.
I guess, I guess it's, maybe it's a lot of unless you have people like you who are really into the minutia of it. Like there's no, in a good way, we're all kind of that way, but like people that seek it out, like, a lot of these people are going to be just lost to history,
Yeah. Well, I'm trying, like, exactly what you mentioned. That's kind of like my life, I figured out, like, there's all these amazing bass players, from the 30s and 40s and 20s, sure. And I want to preserve, what they did, how they did it. And then, because if you talk like to jazz guys, that for them, jazz bass starts with Jimmy Blanton, they are not even talking about Pops Foster and Bill Johnson and all these other people. And I want to make sure that they actually, that those guys are not, forgotten.
Absolutely.
And with that thought, I was thinking, you know what? But those guys are forgotten because they didn't get enough recognition during their lifetime. So I'm thinking, I want to give recognition to all these bass players that are playing now, and then while they're alive, and that it's that I think that's what's important. How you can document all these players, and then for the future generations. And then that's what we're doing right now.
And
I
you're doing
remember
it.
there's one bass player that I love, like one of my favorite guys. His name is Ward Lay. He played in the late 20s,
Okay.
30s a little bit, and nobody know about him. Like nobody know about him, but the amazing player, like really, really innovative and cool slaps, and it's so hard to find any information about him too.
Yeah, and I guess it would be because they didn't even keep records,
Yeah.
of any of that stuff and who was on what recording and back to what you were saying about the jazz thing. Like I remember when there were the only luthiers in Houston. Well, let me rephrase that. There were a couple you take them to your bass to, and they would be like, "You play it how?" Like, ugh. Oh, it's barbaric because they were either used to dealing with people that were classically trained or that were playing, jazz. And you say, well, you slap, and they just think that you're.
It's funny that you mentioned that. Let me stop you for a second. It's funny that you mentioned that. One of the driving force for me, like when I was learning classical and jazz, was okay. So I want to be able to play, Kusevitsky and Dittersdorf, Bottesini concertos. I want to be able to do that. So I want to be able to do, Olio or something, whatever, like a fast bebop stuff. And then if I'm able to do that, maybe all these guys are gonna figure out that I'm serious about music when I play slap too. So they're gonna appreciate it. And I realized that when I'm able to show this part of the like classical and jazz knowledge, they appreciate you immediately, kind of a little more than if you're just like a straight head, like a country player or something. And
exactly, and that's great. That way you can kind of shut them up. Oh yeah, well hey, check this out.
Yeah, and then it's really cool. Then then slap really shines. As I said, you play with the bow and then you play pizzicato, like some melodic solos on this and that.
Yeah.
Then you slap it after that.
Well, deal. And I think that, but it also, like you were saying, a lot of those people don't realize even the history of the music that they play,
Yeah.
And I think that, folks like us, that you kind of like, when you meet someone like such as yourself or just anybody that's into what we're into, it's like we immediately, if we had never met, we immediately have a common language and we can talk about the same stuff for hours on end because we've done the nerding out of researching, you can drop a name like Pops Foster. Oh yeah, great. But if you were to do that to a lot of newer jazz players, they'd be like, who's that? And it's like, oh man, you gotta go back.
It's a little sad. I definitely want to do. I have like even more ideas. How I want to promote that, and I think it's going to happen. More people will know about it.
Yeah, I think it's you're getting the internet really is helping that. Because you're getting there are more people. You can reach more people. I guess.
Yeah.
And
I definitely want to use internet as this and as kind of not just as a source, but like as a tool to promote and bring this whole art like to new people. So
yeah, man, and it's like you have like you call it the art of slap bass. I mean, it's not a barbaric thing. It's not a thing that people that don't know how to play the instrument do. It's like no, these people are very, very good at what they do. And getting that recognition is it's definitely people are amazed by it. Even if they don't know how to play, they're like, "What is that? What are you doing?"
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, it's a special thing.
Yeah.
All right. So we mentioned quite a few artists that you played with. Is there anybody else that you want to mention?
Yeah, I mean, I moved to Nashville. I had known. I had met Jeff Firebaugh. Are you familiar with him?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he's great, and I had just been in Nashville for a couple of weeks, and he was like, "Hey man, the Tennessee Three are looking for a bass player." And I was like, "Really?" And so he gave me an email address, and I guess it would have been Bob Wooten. So the Tennessee Three was Johnny Cash's backing band. But what it was, Bob Wooten, who was his guitar player from 68 until he died, till Johnny Cash died, had the name the Tennessee Three. So, in that sense, it was basically I was playing with Bob Wooten, which still was a thrill. I had been in town for 2 weeks and I got this gig. I was like, well, that was easy. But again, it was because I knew people. And I know people. No, because I knew someone was like, "Hey, you should check." But so I played with him for a while. That was a big thrill. I have to admit, he was great. It was great playing with him every night. He passed away not too long ago, a couple of years ago. It's pretty sad.
Did you ever have a talk with him about Marshall Grant?
I did. Yeah. So, we talked a lot.
Share that.
Yeah. Man, Marshall. Yeah, Marshall. Well, it's funny, man, because like I have a really bad memory, Djordje. Like I always think like, God, I should have been writing all this stuff down. But no, he Marshall was another one, obviously. You go from Bill Black and I think, instinctively, or not instinctively, but just from listening to country music, you're like, oh, okay, well, of course I know who Johnny Cash is. Of course I know Folsom Prison, and I know I'm talking about, when I'm younger. My parents are listening to that stuff, but listening to this, when really delving into it, you go, oh, okay. So Marshall was another, someone to really learn from. And I think, and this is nothing against him at all, but it was just, I think because it was just so simplistic, because they didn't know how to play. I mean, that's not me, downing them. That's the everybody knows the story. Like they all three played guitar, and it's like, well, we all three can't play guitar. So Johnny, I'll play rhythm. Luther, you play electric. Marshall, you play bass. And so he's like, okay, and that's really good for a beginning bass player. So I learned how to play listening to Marshall as well. But as far as Bob, I mean, Bob and Marshall, yeah, man. I mean, I don't think I ever heard a bad word said about Marshall Grant from anybody that knew him. I never got the chance to meet the guy, unfortunately, which is really sad. I can't remember any specific stories, man. I'm sorry. The stories that I do remember Bob talking about would be the one that I really remember, because I asked him how what was it like when Dylan came around, and when Johnny Cash was playing with Bob Dylan, and Bob's answer was, man, he was weird. Like, okay, arguably one of the greatest songwriters of our generation summed up into, man, he was weird.
It's interesting you're mentioning him, because like about a month ago, I interviewed Bob Dylan's bass player, Tony Gagne.
Yeah.
And excellent slapper, excellent slapper. He doesn't have a chance to slap that often, but he was with Robert Gordon. He was with Bob Dylan, Brian Setzer Orchestra. Excellent player. I love him. I'm bummed, I haven't met Marshall Grant too. I started Art of Slap Bass in 2009, and I believe that Marshall Grant died in 2011.
Something like that, yeah.
So I'm thinking like, I should have got in touch with the guy, and
and he was around too, man. Like, I do remember a friend of mine in Nashville. There used to be a Sun record store in Nashville, which was owned by people are going to kill me for not knowing this, but whoever owned all the Sun stuff after Sam Phillips, what was his name? Anyway, so there was a Sun record store in Nashville, and they just sold all the T-shirts and blah 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 blah. But a buddy of mine said that this is before I moved to town. When Marshall wrote his autobiography, he was at the Sun store doing a signing. Nobody showed up except my buddy. And so he sat, my friend sat there for a good while. I say nobody, I'm sure there were a few people trickling in and out, but they were probably all bass players. And that's sad. Wow. Yeah. It's like, obviously Johnny Cash gets the glory. If you're a guitar player, Luther Perkins, I think more people know Luther than they do Marshall.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And he was kind of essential for that sound. He was
just
never
gonna say that, man. He was
player.
Yeah, man. I was just gonna say that. And something that I learned. It's funny, like coming up and down with my bass, but I learned this actually from Dave Rowe. I don't think I want to say learn, but he's something that he really impressed upon me. And I think it's like a lot of us slap players that come up listening to the Sun stuff, not so much Bill Black, maybe kind of, but especially Marshall for sure, is that Dave Rowe called it the pivot note, which is if you're in A, you're 1 and 5 or A and E, and your next chord is E, you don't go to that E twice. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you don't do that, and Marshall would do that. So what you want to do is you want to hit that A twice. So you want to go, Marshall didn't do that. And so, he would be playing and he would just go, which is, it's right. It's technically right, but it's cooler to go, that's something I learned from Dave Rowe. But I guess my point is that, Marshall's not understanding or having a simplistic view of music really helped drive that along, because Luther was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
The whole time I had heard, I don't know if this is true.
And then magic happens.
Yeah. And it's like, I heard that, like I said, someone's probably going to say it's not true, but that Johnny Cash told Luther Perkins if he ever took a guitar lesson, he was fired. Don't know if that's true, but the point of that, I think, is just that like you said, the magic happens when people get together and they just literally come up with a new sound because of limitations, and that's a good starting point for a lot of bass players, I think, is to listen to those records, and because that music is achievable to a beginner.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that little lesson that you got from Dave Rowe. Dave Rowe was actually on the Slapstream explaining.
I watched it. Yeah.
Oh, you did it. Okay, so explain it. I believe that he mentioned that he learned it from Bob Moore.
And that would make total sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, going back again, like we say, even though Bob definitely wasn't a slapper, Bob Moore, is
I think that he was excellent slapper.
Yes,
he was
the
only guy that had recorded bass solo or slap bass solo that, as far as I know, with Elvis.
Okay,
he played Elvis a bass solo on the song "U.S. Mail."
Okay, so yeah, he definitely was, but he wasn't his. He definitely wasn't.
Are you familiar with "Scherzo for Slapped Bass"?
No,
it's by Tupper Saucy.
Oh,
and it's Scherzo for Slapped Bass, Bob Moore on bass, slapping all the way through.
I'm writing that down right now. I got my phone in front of me. So. What is it?
Scherzo for slapped bass.
And
I'll just text it to you.
Yeah. Wait, I forgot. Yeah,
I just texted you.
You're asking me about
it's on YouTube, and it has like 24 views or something.
You're asking me to post stuff on social media, and here I am I'm getting out the pen and paper. Because I forget that we've been texting. But yeah, Bob is really, the epitome of country bass playing, really. I mean, I don't think that would be, that people would argue with me about that, at least modern, country bass playing. I mean, he's the man. I mean, the proof is in the fact that he's on all those songs,
Absolutely. Who would you say is the biggest influence on you as far as bass player?
Man, it would be Kevin. It really would be
Kevin?
Kevin
Okay.
Smith. Yeah, man. I mean, I was thinking about that like before, the last few days after you asked me. Kevin and Rick, for sure, man, because, I think that man, Bill Black too. I guess it's like those three, in that order: Bill Black, Kevin, and Rick. Kevin was the guy that told me, oh, well, these are the, what kind of strings do you use? And he's like, oh, I play these strings. You can get them from Lemur Music. Okay, cool. I didn't know. I would have never known about Lemur Music if it hadn't been for Kevin, because I was playing steel strings. The first bass that I bought had super sensitive strings on it, the steel. We played the first band that I was in. We played a gig, and I had been playing on that for a while, but, I guess maybe it was, a gig and you're just really, the energy, you're like so excited. I broke a string, and of course I didn't understand why my hands were like hamburger. And that's why I don't, guys like you that play with steel strings, I'm in awe of. But Kevin was like, no, I play these strings, they're gut strings. He showed me that. What kind of amp do you, I mean, I knew he was playing Galen Kruger. So it's like, I'm going to get a Galen Kruger because that's what Kevin does. Kevin uses a Boss EQ pedal. I'm going to, he's got an Underwood pickup. That's what, so as far as all of that, like really, he's definitely one of the, probably my biggest influence, as far as,
I always thought about it, because you had that thing going on, that you sounded like a guy from Texas,
Yeah.
It sounded like, somebody who's seen, Kevin and Rick playing. And
absolutely. I think there's those people like there's a
kind of created a Texas.
He absolutely did, man. There's a class that, the class of early 90s or whatever of people that absolutely all, at least at one point. Now, like for example, like Bo Sample went off to conservatory and he's now, but there was a moment in time when he absolutely sounded like Kevin Smith. We all sounded like Kevin Smith because that was the guy to,
I was thinking about it when I was in Serbia. I was like, all these guys kind of sound the same.
I mean, I guess it's it's kind of like if you're a white bar band guitar player from a certain era, you sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan. I don't know, maybe it's that kind of it's definitely not a bad thing. I mean, I
know, but I love the sound, I was like, really, wow.
Well, if you think about it too, here we are, it's like the Kevin Smith appreciation moment. But like I was saying, as far as I know, there's no one that sounded like him up to that point, recording wise. I mean, I could be wrong about that. And what I mean is just the little things, and it was, it was really him and Mark Rubin, because, they did that video together. And if I'm not mistaken, they were roommates. So you've got two great bass players.
They were,
doing like, they were probably doing what we're doing now, but they lived together. So they would be like, oh, look what I came up with, and the drag triplet. I think that they invented that. I could be wrong. I mean, I don't know. But that was the first time.
Mark told me that he got it from Kevin.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty positive that I can hear that on some recordings before that. I'm not sure if those guys were playing that, or was it a mistake? Was it like this or that? Like, for example, I forgot what is the bass player, but he played on I'll remember it with Beltan Fire. The song is called Captain Blood.
Okay.
Mid 80s, like kind of, it's a Blue Cats off project.
Oh, nice.
You can hear that drag or roll or flam, whatever you want to call it. You can hear that. Nice. I'm not sure if it's the same way the way Kevin played it, but even the recording Dinah with Steve Brown, from 26, I believe.
He does that.
You can hear a little bit of that, so I'm not sure. I'm pretty positive people play that, but that Kevin was the guy that kind of made it like, all right, so this is the thing.
and that's, yeah, you know, when you know, before that video came out, the Ungentle Art that he and that they did, you know, I was fortunate enough to, how do you do that? Show me again. And every time I'd see him, be like, show me again, you know, because you like, I don't have my bass with me, because I never had my bass whenever I'd see Kevin play, obviously, because I'm not going to bring my bass to a, you know, to a Ronnie Dawson show. Hey, I'm ready, you know. But you know, show me how to do that. And then I'd go home, dang it, I forgot how to do it, you know. But finally you get it, you know. It's, you know, the one, you'd be like, it's just 1, 2, 3, you know, and you're doing it, and you're like, you know, like I said, like sitting at home, you know, just going, you know, how does he do it? You know, is it, I don't know how, you know, how's that? And then you just, you know, one day you're just, oh, that's it, you know, and you just keep doing it and keep doing it, you know. And, but he definitely is a huge influence, man. I mean, he's the guy for me.
For many people, and there's a reason for that. I just remember it's Mitch Cosby that played the bass on.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Belt and Fire.
But yes, those guys, man. I mean, you know, and then I think, you know, Bob Moore for sure, just as like, not necessarily, you know, I don't want to say that I mean, maybe I have learned some things from Bob, listening to Bob, but more of just an attitude, I think, of like servicing the song. You know, I think that Bob Moore's playing, every note is purposeful. And, you know, there's a, you know, you listen to, you know, just any kind of, I'm trying to think of, just anything that he does, like, you know, even, you know, his shuffles. I mean, he's not doing anything other than like, he'll do 1, 3, and 5, the whole song, maybe throw in a little thing here and there, but every note is purposeful, you know. He's
absolutely. I mean, there's talking about magic. There's lots of magic with
absolutely. Yeah, man. And it,
I
you know,
like
he's,
to ask you,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, you know, he's still around. I guess he's not doing so well. I don't know if, you know, he's got to be pretty old, but you know, he's still around, man. If you could get a chance to talk to him, that'd be great.
Well, I've tried, trust me. I've tried many times, many angles, many times. If you have a way to,
man, I don't. You know, I've met him a couple of times.
Yeah.
But nothing. Yeah, it was more of just like, you're the greatest person ever.
Tell me, like, if you had to choose, like, I don't know, 5, 10, the most essential slap bass recordings. I mean, it could be more, like less, whatever. Which ones would you have to? Which would you choose?
Man, it would be like That's All Right, Mama, because that's the first. You know, I think that's one that I learned the first. You know, the first song that I really learned. Then again, you know, we're talking about Texas Stomp, like that was like, whoa. You know what, dude? Stranger Things, the song Stranger Things, the High Noon one, that's a great one. That really, really got me when I first heard it.
That whole album is kind of essential.
It's fantastic, man. The Glory Bound one is killer too. Dude, the you know, the Willie Dixon Big Three Trio. I mean, obviously that stuff was like the Rosetta Stone, you know, as far as what, for me, you know, what bass playing could sound like. I guess, you know, at the time I didn't know a lot of stuff. Like, I wasn't really hip on like the history, but I guess I didn't know that he played with Chuck Berry. And I'm like, oh, okay, I know that guy. And you go back and you listen to, you know, something that I think that everybody should do is you go back and listen to Johnny B. Good. And like, everybody's played Johnny B. Good, but we've all been playing it wrong, you know. And you listen to what Willie was doing on that, and you're like, oh, okay. And man, let's see, what would be another one? You know what? And I did that on my video, and I guess it's kind of a Willie Dixon thing too. But the Hank Williams, Move It On Over. That little break in there that I don't know who that bass player is. Maybe you do. Is it Joe Zinkin? I don't know. Uh-oh, I can't hear you. Can't hear you. Uh-oh.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, buddy. I couldn't hear you. What was that?
I muted my mic, and then I haven't noticed that it was muted.
So no, I was saying that maybe
I was saying that I love that recording, and I got that recording from Chris Rhodes. He was the one that gave it to me.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Mark Rubin and him about quadruple slap, and then I was like, okay, so I'm doing it this way, and then Chris was like, oh yeah, have you heard this? And I was like, oh no, this is cool.
I know, and it's because it's so buried under there that until someone points it out, you're like, what the? And I mean, I probably, doing it cleanly is really hard but you hear, you're like, oh my God. And then he does it twice and there's no more, and that, like I said, that, that's the Willie Dixon thing and it took me seeing Nicola do it. But even then, I don't think people really explain it very well, because I thought is it a slapping, like hitting the board? And it's not. It's just, it's notes in quick succession. It's just, it's the Willie Dixon. It's just, it's like that, but it's quick. Like, that's it. It's the coolest thing ever.
It's really cool. It's really cool. I remember that when I heard about Nicolas, and I heard about him, because he just emailed me, and then, he noticed that I mentioned Gilles Chevauchery, a French bass player, as one of my heroes, and he's like, "Oh yeah, nobody ever mentioned that guy." I'm glad you do it. And then we started talking. Gee, this got to be like a long time ago.
Yeah.
Like 17, 18 years ago or something. And, I mentioned Gilles on my website, and then he mailed me, actually, like regular mail, a CD of his, and I was like, this guy is great. It shares the same influences and all of that. And then, we became really good friends. I went to Bordeaux, to France, to visit him a couple of times, and that was a blast. Great player. But anyway, my point is that he asked me, like, how can I explain this? And I was like, you know what? As far as my nomenclature would be like 2 double slaps with the second note muted. And it was like, okay, so that kind of stuck to it. And then, like, with that quadruple thing.
Yeah, I guess, and I know, I figured you and I would get into this, because I think you get into it with most of the people that you talk to.
Now's the time.
What do you, and I, again, from the Kevin school, is that, this is a single slap, and this is a double, and then the rake is a triple. That's a triple. But even that triple and that double have like the exact same amount of hits, right? Exactly. It's just more of a, see, and I guess, like, because the other way of thinking of it is that, like, don't you call that a double because you're going 1 2, right? 1 2, right?
Yeah,
makes sense. So
I count slap of the string, and I count the slap of the palm or fingers.
And I get that. So like this is a triple. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
I get it. So, so the Willie Dixon thing is 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that what you would call it?
Well, I don't have my bass with me, but for me would be, I either call it Willie Dixon quadruple, or I call it. But if I have to explain it to my students, I would say that that's 2 double slaps in a row with the second note muted, because you're muting it with your left hand, but you're basically playing twice to cut, and then just the second one you're muting.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, and it took me, like I said, to realize he's not he's not doing like he's not doing that. So what is he doing? And I'm like, what is he doing if he's not hitting the fingerboard, and seeing Nicola, I was like, oh, he's just hitting in succession, so God bless the internet for that.
Yeah, for all these free bass lessons.
Yeah, but I guess the normal, what you call the slaps is, I've got a student that I've been teaching here, and we were actually discussing it last night because I knew you and I would be discussing it today. I'm teaching him how to slap. He knows how to play, roughly, but I'm teaching him slapping and all. Anyway, and I'm like, what should I be calling this stuff? I'm like, I call that a double, but really it's a triple. I don't know. Maybe we all need to get together and have like a big conclave and finally, once and for all say we're all going to start calling these triples and these,
That's kind of the goal. One of the goals of the Slapstream, that I want to hear different people's opinion. And then, with that kind of, I might even do like some medley videos when people talk about like, what is a single slap for you? What is a single slap for you? And, because I think it's important to figure out what is how different people approaches. But then when you ask questions, like, and when you're questioning actually someone's approach, I wouldn't say knowledge, but approach, then you're actually able to progress and then figure out, okay, so maybe it would make more sense doing it this way, not that way.
Because you have to get on the same page.
Yeah.
If you're like if I'm saying, well, it's a quadruple slap, and then people are like, well, I thought that was 1, 2, 3, 4 instead of no 2, 3, no, or whatever.
Be some kind of knowledge.
I get it.
Let me know what are the slap bass players that you like? You kind of cover that, but like that are playing nowadays.
Man, the people, and obviously not saying this because we're talking, but the people that just within the last, I don't know, however many years have made me go, whoa, are you Joe Fick, of course. I did not know Joe until he moved to Nashville. And seeing him was like, holy, I think I need to go home and either A, practice, or B, burn my bass. One of the two. He's great. Nicola is amazing. Obviously, his videos really helped. Dave Rowe. Dave Rose is like kind of one of those guys that if I could try to pattern my playing after, would be him, because I think he's just a really good bass player. Like, he's a killer electric player too, and as well as a great upright slap player. Those guys, and seeing them, Joe and Dave, and being able to see them, almost every night if I wanted to in Nashville was great. It was great. That Nashville's great for that.
That's really cool. One thing that, lots of people like when we cover is like, I want to go through your setup and your gear, basically.
Sure,
So
sure.
what are the bass players that you have? Oh, sorry, bass. What are the basses that you have that you own and play?
Okay.
Pickups,
Yeah.
strings.
So like I said, I have the bass that I have now. It was the bass. So I was playing with I got a call to do a gig, several years ago with a singer by the name of Evill, who's a really good Americana folky singer songwriter, killer. She's one of those singers like I played with her for maybe 3 or 4 years. Never heard her. Actually, only heard her have a bad night once, and that was because she had a cold. Like she was the most consistent singer. She could sing. But anyway, the band. She lived in Boise, Idaho, and I lived in Nashville. The guitar player lived in Indiana, and the drummer. She and the drummer were married. They lived in Boise. But anyway, so I got a Chadwick, which is this that I'm playing now. And it was great. It is great because I wouldn't have been able to really play with Elin without it. So I have the Chadwick, but my main bass is an Upton that I got in 2007. Those are the two basses that I have, uprights. I have a couple of P basses, but as far as upright, that's it.
And what are the strings that you have on these basses?
Well, so, I actually, after 25 years, so Kevin Smith, what he told me back in whenever was he might not have this setup anymore, but his setup was an olive flat wound E and a gut A, D, and G. So plain gut, no wrapping on the A. So this is a plain A. And I was like, hey, it's good enough for Kevin. That's what I'm going to do. And so for up until just a few months ago, that's what I was playing. And why I changed. So what ended up happening is knowing full well, I was moving to Australia, knowing full well that everything is really expensive here because, it's an island halfway around the world. Gut strings are really expensive. So there was a bass player in Nashville. He used to play with a band called Hot Rod Lincoln. His name's Johnny Djordje. He and I played together in this Johnny Cash tribute type thing. He played and sang guitar, but he used the Superior Bass Works strings. And I had tried, actually, Chris Rhodes had given me, back when people figured out that you could use Weed Whacker strings as substitute for gut strings. He's like, man, you should try it. That's what I'm using right now. And I really like it. And I tried it and I was like, man, I mean, it just wasn't for me. And so I, didn't use that and went back to gut strings. So like I said, coming over here, knowing that gut strings are going to be really expensive, I don't change my strings unless they break or they get really, really bad. And I took care of my gut strings, so I didn't really need to change them that often, but I would need to change them. So I ended up buying a set of I ended up buying Superior Bass Works strings, and the strings that I had on this Chadwick were, they were probably 6-7 years old. If I were to hazard a guess, they were just getting. So I put the Superior Bass Works strings on, and man, I love them. I love them. So that's what I'm using now. Pickup wise on this one is my Underwood that I've had since, 2000. Since 95, still works. But on my Upton, I got into, from Dave Rowe and Joe Fick's recommendation, I got the Barbera pickup that's in the bridge.
And amps? What are the amps that you like?
Well, my amps are, I played pretty much from day one. Again, I'm going to say it. We should have like my episode of this will be called the Kevin Smith drinking game. Whenever I say his name, everybody drinks and then they'll all be drunk by the end of it. But Kevin used Galen Kruger RB 800, and I was like, that's what I'm going to get. So I got that, and I used Galen Kruger. I actually am sponsored by Galen Kruger. So I use Galen Kruger amps. I've been using them since day one. I've got right now I've been using the MB Fusion 500, but because I'm moving to Australia, it's really difficult to get. I don't think that Galen's really going to help me out over here. So I was fortunate enough to kind of get help. I've been getting help recently from Fender, because the last few years when I was in Nashville, I was playing the Fender Rumbles, the little combos. I don't know if you're familiar with those.
Oh yeah.
For because like in Nashville, you have, you don't want to lug around like a 410, because I was playing a 410 for your cabinet wise. I was playing, GK Neo 410. It's a great amp, a great cabinet, but I was like, I need something that I can just, and there's a venue in Nashville. It's the American Legion, and every Tuesday they do this Honky Tonk Tuesday thing, and that the backline amp was this Rumble 500, and I was like, combo amps, like, man, it sounds great, because combo technology has come a long way, So when I moved here, I've gotten in with this guy at Fender, and he's hooked me up with the Rumble. So I've been using the Rumble stuff lately.
Those are good amps. I still play 10s. I still play 8, 10 usually, and I play Orange.
Orange,
yeah.
Orange.
I love Orange. It really gives me what I need.
Yeah, man. I've never, I don't ever really need anything like super. I guess I did in Nashville for a while, and that's why I got the Barbera to be, because that pickup, you can be really loud and not have to really worry about feedback or anything like that. But recently, I guess, normally I just don't really have to be super loud, So like the 500, the Rumble. Actually, I have a Rumble 800 now, but that's plenty. God, that's plenty.
It's tricky with those amps. Like, what kind of sound you want? Do you want a big thing? And then it depends.
Yeah.
I've been playing Orange for now 5, 6.
What do you use pickup wise? Oh, you're using Jason's, right?
Jason makes my pickups. Yes, he's making Djordje's signature model pickup, so that's the one that I'm using.
Nice. And is it magnetic?
It's actually something that I had this idea since I started playing bass, and then so I was bugging him, like, I wanted this, like this. He was like, oh, it's complicated. But anyway, like, so we figured it out, and then so he's been making these for me, and it's a magnetic with piezo on the bridge and piezo for slap. So it's basically 3 different slaps, 3 different pickups.
Yeah,
that are going. Before it was a different pedal that he was making for me, but now everything goes into the Channel Blaster 2, which is the tailpiece. So,
right.
And it's great. So I'm really stoked about it.
Are you guys going to start selling those, or are they?
He plans to. We plan to, but I don't know when. That's definitely not a priority. So especially not during pandemic. So
when's it going to end?
It is what it is.
They said 3 weeks.
But I definitely plan to. That's that's a goal.
Yeah, that's cool.
I want to, I pretty much covered everything that I wanted to ask you. Is there anything that I definitely want to hear you play one more time?
Yeah.
Have like a couple more questions, but is there anything that you wanted to mention that I haven't covered?
No, man, I think, we kind of covered it all. I mean, I think that we're both you're a lot more knowledgeable about the players. And I think that's really important. I think that what you're doing is important, and, it's
Thank
getting,
you.
it's, no, man. I mean, seriously, not just saying that, because it is important. Like, these people, mostly guys are they're important, and they don't need to, get lost to history. It's very important to do that. But as far as, man, I don't know. I just hope everyone stays safe, and, if anybody wants to get in touch, they can do it through my website, which is shawnsupra.com, or they can do it through social media. I've been doing lessons recently in person. I could probably do Skype lessons if anyone's, wants to do that. Yeah, man,
You're so humble. We're gonna so all these links are below this video. So if you guys want to get in touch with Sean, you can do that through his website, his Instagram, and just go click under the video, and then you're gonna be able to get in touch with Sean. But before that, before we end and do everything, could you please play one full long Wayne Hancock style?
I will, but you know what? I've gotten a lot, not a lot better, but I've gotten better since I played with Wayne. And there, it's funny. Like before I figured out the Willie Dixon thing, I came up with like a cheap imitation of one that I don't think I've really heard a lot of. I mean, listen, but it's so I'll do some of that. Like I'll throw some of that in there. It's just basically it's basically just doing, but still like, so if Wayne were to he'd be like, take two, he'd be, so you're like, little flubs there, but that I don't hear a lot of people doing that. I mean, I'm not saying I invented it, but it was because I couldn't do the, so it was just, I was like, maybe it just, anyway.
It's cool. It's interesting how we all try to figure out a certain lick, and when we come up with something else, something new, and and it becomes a thing. Awesome.
Yeah, man.
I have one more question for you. Sure. So after all these years, you had like pretty successful career. You played in Texas. You toured a lot. You moved to Nashville. You played Lower Broadway, which is kind of the school for bass.
Absolutely, man.
Now you're in Australia, so you've been all over the place. You did lots of things. What inspired you to still do what you do?
I mean, I could say a multi-answer. That would be never, even though I think, like when I'm like, oh, I'm good enough to get work, but I think there's always something to strive for. When you see someone do something or you hear a recording, you're like, oh man, that's great. I need to learn that. But also, man, if I was going to be honest, it would be just being comfortable with me as a player, and like settling in to, I think that as, I'm going to get all psychoanalyzing, but I think as a lot of us, at least me, tend to have this kind of, there's a point when you start, when you first start playing, you have so much fun doing it. And then if the further along you go, especially if you do it as a career, for me, it sometimes it really wasn't that fun. And I think a lot of that was because I felt like I was always comparing myself to other people. Getting comfortable with who I am as a player and has made it more fun to play. So I guess the ultimate answer is just making sure that it's still fun. You know, it's still fun to play music, man. I mean, sometimes, yeah, it sucks, but it's still fun to, when you know, there's that moment that I think we've all had when we're playing with a group of people and you just feel it. You're like, man, that's what it's about. You know, it's not about the crowd. It's not about anything other than just that moment of, you know, those 3 or 4 people or however many people just like doing this. And that I think that's what we're all, you know, striving for. So maybe that, having fun.
It's all about that. Thanks so much about, you know, for being part of the Slapstream 45th episode. Can you imagine 45 episode about Slap?
It's my second favorite record format, the 45. So you know, and my first, because I'm a big nerd, is the 78. So
oh, really? Okay.
You know, but yeah, man, thanks for having me. And I like I said, it's a big honor when you asked me. I was like, oh man, me? Really? Okay. Hey, you know, if I'm in this, like when you make the list of people and I'm in the same list as Joe and Dave Rowe and you know, all the, I mean, hey, I'm cool with that.
Awesome.
Well, you know, meet in person one day.
Yeah, we have to make it happen.
You're ever
Thanks
in Sydney,
so much, and you know, stay safe, and hopefully everything's going well for you in Australia, and then you're gonna start gigging and then playing, and I hope I'm gonna see you play live one day.
Hey man, and have a great gig, and you know, just keep in touch.
Of course.
Bye, buddy.
Same here.
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. 45th episode. It's done. It's over. Thanks so much, like, for being a part of the Slapstream with Djordje, live from Slapsville. Just a little bit different environment. I'm playing tonight, so I had to bring Slapsville with me. Before I finish, I would like to say thank you for everyone that bought a t-shirt. You can do that if you haven't bought a t-shirt. You can buy one on artofslapbass.com/store. Just go there, check out black or red. First t-shirts I ever made, so it was a trip. I'm kind of excited about it. So once you get them, it's all of them are shipped, you know, the ones that are ordered. And I mentioned at the beginning, I made a mistake with shipping charges, so I charged everyone a flat fee for all over the world. So, you know, people from Australia is the same as here in California. So we can, if you feel like once you receive it, you can add the difference via Venmo or PayPal, or you can just join my Patreon and we can call it even. Or you can just wear the t-shirt and we're going to be done. All right. So thanks a lot for everything. And don't forget, never fret, slide it in smooth, and keep it in a groove. This is Djordje, and I'll see you next Saturday.